Okay, welcome back to English literature, that is Form 1 and Form 2, and our focus now will be on poetry. And you're with me, Tiwangi Mwandira. So first of all, we're going to look at an overview of poetry. We're going to discuss elements of poetry, and then from there, that's when we're going to look at how a poem is analyzed. So poetry is defined as a form of literature that uses concise, colorful, often rhythmic language to express ideas or emotions. That's our definition of poetry. And a poem is a written expression of emotions, thoughts, or ideas in the form of verses and stanzas, often arranged rhythmically. So we're going to explain more about verses and stanzas in our next slides. And poetry is one of the 4 genres of literature that authors use to convey their various thoughts and messages to readers and the public. The other genres include short story, novel, and drama. So these are what we call forms or genres of literature. We've got a short story, a novel, and a drama. So the 4th one is what we call poetry. So a poem consists of a persona and an addressee. So the persona is the one who is speaking or addressing the audience in the poem. So when a poet writes a poem, he may choose which person or what thing is going to be the persona. So the persona is the speaker that is given a voice in a poem. So as we said, the poet is free to choose anyone or anything and make them a persona. So a human being, an animal, a group of people, a tree, even God, the whole village, or even a car can be given a voice in a poem. So it's not only human beings, but it can be an animal, a group of people. People can speak as a group. Even a tree has got no life as a human being, but it can be given a voice and speak in a poem. Even God himself can be the persona, and even the whole village or even a car can also be the persona. So there's no limit as to who the persona can be. Anything or anyone can be given a voice and become a persona in a poem. Remember that the persona is not necessarily the author of the poem, although there can be cases where the author directly addresses the audience, but most of the time it's not the author who is the persona. So if there is a poem written by Deborah Mwase, it doesn't mean that Deborah Mwase is the persona. That is the author. So the author chooses someone who is representing him or her in the poem, and that person or that thing becomes our persona. Now, an addressee is the one to whom the message is intended. So if the persona is speaking, it means there has to be someone who is receiving that message. So the one who is receiving that message is called, in this case, an addressee. So the addressee could be the youth, the public, politicians, citizens, educational institutions, world leaders, etc. So the message can go to the youth. You know, there are so many problems that the youth are doing right now. So the persona can be maybe old people, maybe the elderly, talking to the youth how they have changed their behavior, how rude they are, how impolite they are. So in this case, the youth becomes the addressee because they are receiving message. Even the public can become the addressee. Politicians, maybe they have made a promise to people to do some things, but they haven't honored it. It means if the public is the persona, it means that message is intended for the politicians, so they become the addressee. Citizens as a whole, and even educational institutions or even world leaders, these all can become addressees. So here's another feature of poetry. So we say compared to other three genres of literature, poetry is synonymous or is known for with the use of few words to express a lot of ideas or themes. So as we have seen, a novel can have a very big length. Even a short story or even drama, a play, can occupy a lot of space. But a poem can use very few words. You can have a poem which has got maybe 2 stanzas, and it can talk about so many things at once because poetry compresses the large message into very few words. So it is very economical with words, so to say. So poetry is also synonymous with this feature, that poets use few words to express a lot of ideas and themes or messages. So when discussing poetry, 5 aspects usually come to play or are considered or are taken into consideration, and these are form, sound, imagery, theme, and figurative language. So we're going to discuss all these in detail. That is, they are contained below. First, we go to form. On form, we are saying a poem consists of lines or verses, and a group of lines makes up a stanza. So in prose fiction, a line is similar to a sentence, and a stanza is similar to a paragraph. So a poem has to have lines and not sentences. So we are comparing lines in a poem to a sentence in a prose fiction, whether it's a novel or it's a short story. So a line is also called a verse. So a group of lines is known as a stanza. So we are also comparing a stanza to a paragraph in prose fiction. Number 2, a poem can be written using a formal structure or in a free verse. In a formal structure, a poem is divided into a specific number of stanzas, and each stanza has a specific number of lines. So that's our formal structure. If you have got 4 lines in each stanza, it means if you have got 5 stanzas, it means each one of those stanzas is going to contain 4 lines. That's what we call a formal structure. And a free verse is where a poet does not adhere to any specific number of stanzas. Here, a poet may choose to write continuously without even demarcating this is first stanza, second stanza, third stanza. So they just write freely without any following this formal structure. Number 2, we have sound, which is another feature. So on sound, we have got rhyme. We all know what rhyme is. It's a repetition of same sounds at the end of words to produce a musical effect. Okay, this is where identical sounds are repeated, often at the end of lines. The aim is to produce a musical effect. As we know, a poem can also be sung sometimes. If there is a rhyme is where words that have similar sounds, like but, pat. So this sound t at the end is repeated in these two lines, so it becomes a rhyme. Then another feature on sound, we've got repetition. So this is simply the repeating of sounds, words, phrases, or lines in a poem to emphasize an idea or convey a certain meaning. So a line can be repeated in each and every stanza so as to draw readers to a certain idea that we want to emphasize. Like in a song, we have got the chorus. So the chorus is where a line or maybe lines are repeated in each and every verse in a song. So it's similar to repetition, where we want to emphasize a certain idea. Another feature on sound, we've got this one, onomatopoeia. So these are simply words that imitate or sound like the actions they describe. If you hit a door, it will bang. So from that sound, we create a word bang. There's slap, there's hiss. Okay, so this hiss is for a snake, and then slap, maybe you are hitting someone. So that sound is what we create from that scenario. So these are also there in a poem to create a musical effect, to make it sound like music. Then finally on sound, we have got alliteration. This one refers to repeated consonant sound at the beginning of words or within words, used to establish mood, to emphasize, and to link words, as well as to create pleasing musical sounds. So it's where consonant sounds are repeated in several lines. So examples here, the fair breeze blew. So breeze blew, we have got a B sound here. The white foam flew. So there's sound here, foam and flew. A big bully beats a baby boy. We have got the B sound that has been repeated. The wizard wonders whether he will work tonight. This sound ooh. Wizard wonders whether he will work tonight. So it's also there to create musical pleasing sounds, and also to establish a mood. That's the use of alliteration. We go to another feature, which is imagery. We all know an image, something which is like a picture. So imagery is mental pictures which are created by descriptions of the senses so that we can see and feel what the character is experiencing. So the words used appeal to the reader's senses. So we're able to sense while reading a poem. Examples say his pointed nose, red eyes, and thin careless lips scared the child. So by reading this line, you may be able to visualize who this person looks like, because it's like you are seeing that pointed nose, or you are seeing those red eyes and those colorless lips, as if you are seeing a person but it's not there. Then the pizza made his mouth water in anticipation. It seems like you are seeing that pizza's there, and you may also get some saliva from it. The stone fell with a splash in the lake. It's like you are seeing water splashing. The heaps of rubbish produces a strong smell. It's like you are seeing those heaps of rubbish, and then you are feeling the smell as well. On a sunny day, Brandina sprinkles raindrops on my face. It seems like rain is falling and then it is sprinkled on your face, but it's not there. So that's what imagery does. It takes you right inside the poem and makes you feel using your senses of sight, senses of touch, senses of hearing, senses of smell, and the like. Our next feature is the theme. This is simply the meaning of a poem and what it reveals about human nature. It's the main message that the poem has. So a poem can have more than one theme that can be applied to everyday life. So examples of themes are love, politics, destiny, power of tradition, modernity versus tradition, generation gap, loyalty, poverty, effects of war, migration, education, gender, oppression, etc. There can be so many themes that we can get from a poem. Our next feature, which is the final one, is the figurative language or poetic devices. So on figurative language, a poem or poetry is very much different from other genres of literature like the short story, the novel, and the drama. Here, the language used is a little bit deeper. Why? Because authors use what we call figurative language. It's not the common language we use every day. So this language is also known as poetic devices. So we're going to discuss some of them that are mostly present in poems. So the first one is the simile. So this one is the comparison of two unlike things with the explicit use of like or as. For example, her smile was as cold as ice. I feel like a fish out of water. These are just two examples of similes that we have where we use like or as to compare two unlike things that we think may have something in common. Number two, I've got a metaphor, which is still a comparison of two unlike things, but now without explicitly using like or as. So you compare them directly. Your smile is a ray of sunshine. Instead of saying your smile is as a ray of sunshine or is like sunshine, you just say your smile is a ray of sunshine. Likewise, here he has a heart of a lion. Instead of saying his heart is like a lion, you just say he has a heart of a lion. Maybe he is too brave. Okay, so it's like you are comparing it directly without using as or like. Our next poetic device is the hyperbole. Some call it hyperbole. This is an exaggeration or an expression of exaggeration intended to create an emphasis or used for a humorous effect, just to make people laugh or to make the poem more funny or just to create an emphasis. So when a thing is exaggerated, it means you add so much power to it to amplify it. So the following lines show exaggeration. She loves me more than life itself. That's an exaggeration because no one can love someone more than life because life always comes first. So if you say she loves me more than life itself, you are trying to say that she loves you very much. So you are trying to intensify it to make it more emphasized. Another example here, I feel buried under a mountain of work. It means there's so much work. It feels like a mountain to you. So it has been exaggerated here to emphasize that work is too much. I am dying of thirst. You can't say you are dying because a dying person doesn't know that he or she is dying. But if you say I'm dying of thirst, it means you have too much thirst. You need water so much. I will love you until eternity. You know, eternity is when it's forever. So nobody can love someone forever because at some point we might die and then leave someone behind. So it's just used to emphasize the love that we have for someone. Then I think of her a million times a day. This is impossible. You cannot think of a person a million times. It's too much. But it's used to emphasize that you are too much. Maybe you are too much in love with that person that you can't get a thought out of your head of that person. That's an emphasis. Our next device is what we call personification, and this is simply where human qualities are attributed to non-human things. So human qualities, we know them. A human being can eat, can smile, can run. So if those features are given to non-human things, we call it personification. Examples are here. Poverty stared into our faces. Stare means to look at. So poverty, which is a non-human entity, has been given this feature. Stare, which to look at. Luck has smiled on me. It means now your life has changed for the better. So luck, smiling. The fire swallowed the whole village. Swallowing is a human feature. The farms are begging for rain. Farms, these are not human objects, human things, but they are begging for rain. Maybe there's drought, so they want rain to come. This city never sleeps. A city, a place. So sleeping is a human feature. The sun smiles as it welcomes a new day. So the sun smiling, maybe it's sunrise, so it seems like it's smiling as it welcomes a new day. So we're saying stare, smile, swallow, beg, and sleep are all human characteristics, but they have been given to non-human beings. Our next feature, or our next poetic device, is symbolism. We know a symbol, something which stands for something else. The use of an animal, an object, etc., to represent an idea that is beyond itself. So we think beyond what we know of that thing, a common meaning of that thing. For example, a dove can represent peace. This is an animal. So when we see it, what comes into our mind is peace. So a dove represents peace. An owl can represent bad luck. We have seen in our villages where an owl is producing a voice at night. We say somebody is going to die. So we have attributed bad luck to an owl. So it's a symbol of bad luck. So if it's present in a poem, normally it is used as bad luck. And the lion can represent loyalty, where maybe you are loyal to your king or your president. So a lion represents that because a lion is seen as a king of the jungle. So if you are loyal to your chief or your leader, it means that is a representation of a lion. A chain may symbolize imprisonment or union. So if you say I'm in chains, it means you are in prison. A union, because chains are connected, they connect metals together to form one chain. So it can also be a representation of a union. Red may symbolize blood, passion, danger, or happiness. Blood, because when you lose a lot of blood, maybe freedom fighters, there's a symbol on our national flag, Malawian flag, where there's red. It symbolizes those that died fighting for our liberty, for our freedom. So they are represented by blood, which is red on that flag. Passion, that's love. Danger, it's red for danger. Okay, and also happiness can also represent happiness. Next is allusion, and it is a reference to a well-known character or event from another story, history, myth, or place in order to enrich the reading experience by adding meaning. So allusion is where you take a very famous story or myth. We have got Greek myth and the Roman myth, or even in history, and then take it out and then put it in a poem so that you add more meaning to what you are communicating. That's what we call allusion. So readers have to be familiar with these allusions in order for them to connect their relevance to the poem. So you have to know the story first before you connect it to the poem. So most allusions are derived from the Bible. That's the Christian Bible. And examples are the forbidden fruit from the Bible, of course, the Achilles heel, that's from Greek mythology, Cain and Abel from the Bible, the Tower of Babel, Lot and his wife, Sodom and Gomorrah, David and Goliath, the prodigal son, Solomon's wisdom, the Good Samaritan, Genesis, Judas' kiss, the story of Job, etc. So, for example, Judas' kiss might represent betrayal because Judas betrayed Jesus. So all of these might represent an idea in a poem. So we call them allusions. Then we go to contradiction or oxymoron. This is where two words that seem contradictory are used together to create new effect. So two words that are opposite of the other are used together to create a new effect. Examples are a sad smile. A smile is something which represents happiness. Sad is the opposite. So we say sad smile. Small crowd. Crowd, number of people. Many people. So small is something that is not many. So it's small crowd. An impossible solution. Bittersweet. Maybe you have got something that has got both bad and good characteristics. An open secret. A secret is supposed to be not open, but it's say an open secret, it means everybody knows it, although it's considered to be a secret. Conspicuous absence, hate with passion, a deafening silence, bad luck. All these are examples of contradictions or oxymoron. Then we go to another interesting feature, which is called irony, which is a technique that involves surprising, interesting, or amusing contradictions or contrasts. So verbal irony occurs when words are used to suggest the opposite of their usual meaning. So you mean something else, but you use something which is opposite of what you mean. That's an irony. E.g., pastors preach charity, but they own private jets. So charity is where you have the will to donate to some poor people, but if you own jets, it means you are doing the opposite of what charity is supposed to achieve. So that's an irony there. We go to tone. This is the author's attitude towards a subject and is revealed by choice of words and details. Tone can be angry, bitter, indifferent, defiant, sarcastic, serious, playful, pompous, detached, humorous, admiring, solemn, amused, pessimistic, nostalgic, intimate, formal, ironic, satiric, sentimental, etc. So it's about how the author chooses to approach their subject. So an author might be angry and may use angry words. So a poem becomes with a feature of an angry tone, bitter, maybe humorous. This poem is very funny, admiring, and all these adjectives. Paradox. This is a statement that reveals a kind of truth, although at first it seems to be self-contradictory and untrue. For example, good fences make good neighbors. A fence is supposed to separate two people. But if you say good fences make good neighbors, it means it's a paradox because a neighbor should not be separated from you, but a fence is there to separate you. Okay. Drinking a lot of water can often make you feel thirsty. Drinking water can remove thirst, but if you are saying drinking a lot of water can often make you feel thirsty, it means you are using a paradox. Although it can have a truth somehow. Cheap things are expensive. Maybe you buy something now which is very cheap. Tomorrow it's gone. You need to buy something else. So maybe by the end of a month you have bought maybe 5 of them. But if you bought it at a much more expensive price, it would have lasted maybe for 1 year or 2 years. So if it is cheap, it becomes expensive. Although it's a paradox, there is some truth in this. There's some truth that we see in our everyday lives. Then I've got the satire, which is also a feature or a poetic device, writing that comments humorously on human flaws or human bad actions of human beings, ideas, social customs, or institutions in order to change them for the better. So a satire is there to criticize these things, ideas, social customs, institutions, even the government. So most political poems are in form of satires. They criticize the systems that we have around the world. So it becomes a satire. Then mood is the feeling of a feeling a piece of literature is intended to create in reader. Remember, tone there was like the author's attitude, the way the author chooses words and can make the poem humorous, ironic, angry, and the like. But mood is about the reader. How do you feel after reading a poem? Do you feel sad? Do you feel angry? Do you feel joyful? So mood can be sad, joyous, sorrowful, longing, angry, frightening, assuring, uplifting, pessimistic, pitiful, etc. So it depends on the words used for you to feel the specific mood in the poem. Note now, proper interpretation of the above poetic devices is what helps readers decipher or know the connotative or hidden meaning of a poem. So connotative meaning is a hidden meaning. How do we know it? By interpreting the above literary devices that we have already discussed. So denotative meaning or literal meaning is the one that does not require a deeper understanding for it to be worked out. So we normally focus on a connotative meaning when we are interpreting a poem. That's why the above devices are key to deciphering or to know the connotative or the hidden meaning in a poem. Now, having gone through all those literary devices, let's now apply them here. Let's analyze this poem by Dora Mwasi, known as Song of a Car. So we're going to read it first, and then at the end we're going to analyze it. I came to you sleek and new, beyond the reach of many, yet many were my adorers, daily polished and perfumed, and adorned with embroidery. You gave me a caressing touch. Now that potholes and humps have rattled and warped my back, you turn me into a chicken house. That's our poem. So let's analyze it below. So Song of a Car analysis. So in a literal sense or in a denotative sense, in this poem, a car is complaining that at first it was beautiful and well cared for by the owner, but now the owner has stopped caring for it on a literal level, that is, on a denotative level. That's what we see from that poem. It has been cared for, but now it has been abandoned by the owner. He or she, that is the owner, does not polish, perfume, and decorate it with flowers. So the car is full of cracks and bumps. The owner has turned it into a chicken house. That's on a literal point of view. Now, connotatively, the poem could be an allegory describing human problems. So an allegory is like a symbol, a representation of something beyond what we see. So it could be about marriage problems in which the woman gets married to a man and the man buys body lotion, perfume, and embroidery. These are like beads and the like that beautify a woman to maintain the beauty of that woman. So in marriage, for the first time, in the first month or first years, a man is always taking care of a woman by buying all these things to maintain the beauty that he found in the first place. However, with time, the love declines and the man no longer takes care of the woman until the skin becomes hard, dry, bumpy, and rough. So it's an experience that is all over us in our societies, where as time passes, the love diminishes towards a woman. So the woman is no longer taken care of, and eventually she loses her beauty in form of having hard skin, dry skin, and even a bumpy or rough face. So we're saying this poem can also refer to politicians. So during campaigns, they are friendly, generous, and distribute a lot of gifts to their prospective voters. You may agree with me that this is very true. Politicians are very clever when they are campaigning. They may distribute all these things to voters in order to lure them or to attract them, to give them their votes. They chat with them closely and make a lot of good promises to them. When they have been voted into power, they deliberately forget all the promises they made and distance themselves from the people who voted them into power. That's what they do. That's what happens mostly in our societies. You promise them, and then at the end you distance yourself from them after you have got all the votes. So here now the voters become useless and are neglected, just as the car has been neglected in our beautiful poem above there. Similarly, when the party is voted out from power, diehards run away from the party, leaving the president with a few individuals. It also happens. It's not only politicians, but also people who support a certain party. So if it is voted out from power, those who were seen as diehards run away because benefits are no longer there. So they abandon it and move to the ruling party. They do that because they know that the financial and material benefits that they used to get from the party are no longer there. So they start talking bad of the party and its leadership. The party and the leader become useless to them, just as the car has become useless to the owner in the poem above. We go to language use, and the author uses simple and straightforward language in this poem. We go to personification that is present there. The car is given human attributes. For example, the use of personal pronoun I. It's like it's speaking, so it has been given this feature of speaking as a human being. Go to mood. The persona is sad, so there is a sad mood because he's complaining about the neglect has been abandoned by the owner. So there's a sad mood that has been established. Then we go to tone. So the persona is complaining because of being neglected by the addressee. So it is a complaining tone. So the author uses words that give us a tone that is complaining. It's a lot of complaints. Symbolism. A car in this poem stands for neglected beings. It's like a car itself is a symbol where it stands for neglected beings, people who have been neglected by those that cared for them at first. Potholes and bumps represent hardships the persona is going through. Chicken house represents neglected beings, so you turn it into a chicken house. It means what you are doing now was not done to it before you regarded it as something that was dear to you. So chicken house here represents neglected beings. So here it can be people, voters, or even the party that has lost the elections. Themes drawn from this poem include oppression, regret, and neglect. Oppression because the woman is oppressed because the beauty is gone, and then now the man is not taking care of her. So it's oppression already. Even politicians, when they neglect the voters, it's oppression. Regret, say, why did I get married to this man? Okay, if a car is complaining, it means the woman is complaining why she got married. So it's regretting there. And again, neglect, abandonment is also a theme that can be drawn from that poem. So oppression where the person is not given what he or she deserves by the addressee. Regret, the person is regretting his or her association with the addressee for he or she had many adorers at the beginning, as we have explained above. Neglect, the addressee has stopped taking care of the persona, or he has abandoned her or him. So after that analysis on poetry, we are going to have 3 additional poems where we're going to read them, and then we're going to briefly analyze them. So our first poem is Love by Julia Mambo. So the title is Love and the author is Julia Mambo. So I'm going to read this one and then we're going to briefly analyze it. Nothing is good without you, for you refresh like sleep, full of sweet dreams. You are a gentle wind, sighing fresh from roses. You are my joy forever, for your tenderness keeps flowing like an all-season spring running down a rock. So basically this poem is talking about love, as its title suggests. So love, the persona here is the one who is being loved. So he or she is appreciating the love that he or she gets from the one who is giving that love. So he's saying nothing is good without you, for you refresh like sleep. So here, refreshing like sleep is our first poetic device, which can be described as a simile, because they are comparing this refreshment to sleep. So they are using like to compare these two. So this is our simile. So full of sweet dreams, you are a gentle wind. You are a gentle wind. It's like it's a metaphor because they are comparing it directly with the use of as or like. So sighing fresh from roses. We know roses are usually symbols of love. A rose given to someone may symbolize that person is being loved so much. Then they say, you are my joy forever. So this one, and again this one, nothing is good without you, can also be seen as an exaggeration, because they're trying to talk about that person as if the only thing that is good in this world, which is we can take it as an exaggeration or a hyperbole, as we have already described in our poetic devices above. So for your tenderness, this is tenderness is more or less like love that is so sweet, so soft, keeps flowing like an all-season spring. So here's another simile, which is trying to relate the tenderness that is there forever, keeps flowing like an all-season spring. A spring is where we learn this in geography, where there's a place where water comes out continuously, hot water comes out continuously without ceasing. So this tenderness is like this spring that doesn't stop. So it's like an everlasting love that this person is experiencing. So running down a rock. So our main theme here is love. It could be love from somebody who is your wife, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, love from a parent, from a mother, from a father. Again, it could also be love from God, because here we see that it's forever. So God's love is forever, it doesn't stop on us. So it could be love from anyone, and being described by anyone who is on the receiving end of that kind of love. That's our first poem. Our second poem is a woman, and this is written by Chris Mwawa. So we're going to read this quickly and then briefly analyze it. On her back, so here we go. On her back, she carries a young baby. On her head, a big calabash full of water. In front of her is a burden of another one coming soon. With long strides, the man ahead shouts at her, "Quick, woman!" So there we go. That's our poem. So as we can see here, there's a man and a woman. Probably they're coming from a farm, and then the woman is carrying something on her back. A young baby, and on her head she's carrying a calabash full of water. And then in front of her, there is a burden. So this burden could be pregnancy. So she's expecting another child. And this is, they're saying, coming soon. So it means she's heavily pregnant, expecting another child, and yet she's carrying all these things, a baby, a calabash. And with long strides, the man ahead shouts at her. So presumably a man is not carrying anything. He's just walking, while the woman who is carrying all this is being shouted at to walk quickly. So this poem basically it highlights our values in our society, where women are being oppressed in marriage, of course. So here the man, being seen as the head of the family, the most powerful, is trying to mistreat the woman by doing this, not carrying one of these, either a baby or a calabash of water, and then he's there to just shout that she should walk quickly, and yet the woman might be tired because of all this burden that she's carrying. So this is about it's all about the women's situation in our country. How are they treated? So we talk about patriarchy. Our society is based on it favors men other than women. So a woman cannot talk here because she's maybe supposed to obey her husband no matter what. So our cultural values sometimes disadvantage our women and put more advantage on men, so that we are able to mistreat them and get away with what we are doing. So this is basically a poem that highlights our cultural traditions that mostly favor men over women. Then finally, our last poem, Readers of Tomorrow. This is written by George Pungurani. So I'm going to read this again and then briefly see what it means. You readers of tomorrow, on what cornerstones are you going to build? Running away from school, where true leaders are baked. You hide in dark corners. Can one find happiness in sex, drink, and smoke, the very horns of death? So, as we have seen, this poem with 3 stanzas is trying to highlight how the youth have gone astray nowadays. So, the youth are seen as readers of tomorrow. But if you look at a reader is somebody who is able to have moral values, who is able to read people in a way that people would see them as exemplary. But now, if these readers of tomorrow are doing what they are doing here, running away from school, where they say true readers are baked, because school is the cornerstone, as I've indicated here, where readers are formed. We learn so many things. We learn discipline at school. Even we learn how to read and write, to be of high literacy. So if we are running away from school, it means our leadership styles are going to be questionable at the end. Okay, so you say you hide in dark corners. So can you find happiness in sex, drink, and smoke, the very horns of death? So these are described as horns of death. So basically our theme here is moral decay in our youth, in our society. So it's a question that, are you going to be readers of tomorrow if you are doing all what you are doing here? So here they say, where true leaders are baked. So it's like baking, which is related to baking cakes and the like, is translated into formulating of true leaders at school and in whatever institution that are there. So here again they say the very horns of death, where they say this smoke, drink, and sex are the horns of death. So this can be a metaphor. So a horn is something that may be harmful to us. So a horn is compared to death, because they say these ones, drink, smoke, and sex, they are the horns. They are the traps that may lead to death. So the whole poem is trying to warn our youth so that they should walk a good path, so that they should become leaders, good leaders of tomorrow. Having said that, we stop here, but our next conversation shall be with the Pill, which is a novel in the senior section. Thank you very much.
Simutaya nthawi yanu kufunafuna maphunziro muzakhala wotumidwa moyo wanu wonse. Ngati simuphunzira anthu azingokutumani, ajala kalime, ajala kuchwe manyazi, ajala katende yanti, ndipo anthu ophunzira wandu wotumanso kwambiri. Ndiye ngati simuphunzira, skulu akuyikirani apa mukhala otumidwa.